The State Department has changed its official font back to Times New Roman from Calibri. I know fonts are a sensitive topic. I will try to keep this a no opinion zone and stick to the facts that I think people are not considering. According to the stories, Calibri is considered wasteful. Using Times is expected to restore decorum and professionalism. Using Calibri was considered a DEIA program. When Calibri was first chosen in 2023, the claim was it was more readable for people with disabilities. Given the facts, nobody can say this was the right or wrong decision. Any choice has trade-offs. People have to balance them based upon what's important to them. Is Calibri really more readable? There are no conclusive studies finding this. This one found no difference, though Calibri was the control against a font designed for dyslexics. This one compared Times New Roman and Arial against another font for dyslexics. No Calibri, but still no difference. I was not able to find any studies with conclusive or even strong evidence why use Calibri in the first place. Nothing on Scholar. ChatGPT says no. This is not like removing a wheelchair ramp. Most would probably prefer not to switch everything to a font designed for dyslexics, especially without convincing evidence. And fonts are customizable. You can set your browser to show everything in wingdings. You can print stuff out once changed, or your device can read it for you. This is the beauty of electronic media. Some believe the adage that sans serif fonts are easier to read on screens and serif fonts on paper. When I wrote this article 15 years ago, that was true. Screens were low resolution, so something like Garamond was hard to read, which is why fonts like Calibri exist. Microsoft designed them in the early aughts to be easier to read on low resolution screens. At that point, they were at least attempting to make fonts look smooth on the screen. Before that, fonts were only black and white, no gray to smooth things, making even Comic Sans more readable than Garamond. But things are different. Computer screens were well under 100 pixels per inch. Phones are now 400 or 500. Maybe the State Department uses cheap laptops. They could be 140 ppi, which would be pretty uncomfortable. What about this claim Calibri is wasteful? Times New Roman was designed for the London Times in 1931, and Stanley Morrison designed it to save both paper and ink. So it's pretty narrow and has a lot of contrast between thick and thin. I ran a test and found changing from Times New Roman to Calibri gives you the exact same length, though there's a good chance Times uses less ink with more contrast between thick and thin. The change from Courier New in 2004 would have saved paper because everyone knows you use that font to make your essay longer. Now, decorum and professionalism. This study found that people preferred the aesthetics of a web page set in all Times New Roman versus Calibri or combinations of the two. So that's some evidence, maybe not conclusive. The major thing nobody has mentioned, and that's more subtle, is should the United States government use a font designed for an English newspaper? Seems kind of un-American.